Hello, good morning. Welcome everybody to this new episode about sales leadership. I'm really excited to bring this new topic to you, to the audience, to the community here. We will talk about the importance of the sales leadership and how does the sales leadership plays, what roles it plays in the success of the team, success of the organization, and how does it works towards making the strategies and successful strategies when it comes to the overall success of an organization. We will kind of dive deep into it much more in a conversational model between myself and my co-host and my partner, Simon Rodriguez. Myself, I'm Wajid Ali, based out of Toronto, Canada. And the purpose of these podcasts is to share our learnings and our experiences with the community, with the audience, with the people that we work with on a digital platform here, and to ensure that whatever we have learned, we can share, give back to the community. So that's the entire purpose, and that's what we feel is a success for us. I will welcome Simon to come on and give his introduction, and then we will kind of jump into the topic. So Simon, you're up.
Thank you, Wajid, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. We really look forward to sharing more details, building on the latest topics we have addressed during the previous sessions. As Wajid mentioned, we're focusing on like these different series in terms of sharing best practices around sales leadership. And today we want to go into some of the aspects about how a sales leader builds, obviously, his team and builds that successful, let's say, foundation in order to achieve their goals and their objectives as an organization. From my perspective, from my side, I'm Simon Rodriguez. I'm also based here in Canada, Western Canada, in Calgary in particular, and I've been, let's say, in the sales area for close to 18 years, and we look forward to sharing more details and perspective today. We wanted to perhaps start, and I wanted to go maybe with a question here with it in terms, we have been discussing like different aspects into sales, different processes, and how to go about building a true connection and kind of a specific sales process. Now, if we look at the from the leadership perspective, I wanted to get your thoughts about how do you see that leadership foundation when it comes to building a new team, aligning in terms of objectives, goals, and even methodology and processes, right, in order to achieve a specific goal. So any initial thoughts, Wajid? I know it's kind of a broad topic, but yeah, wanted to get your thoughts around that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Simon. That's what we wanted to bring it to the table today, and to kind of dive deep into. I think what I'm gonna do here, I'll just go very high level here, and then we can sort of unpack the concept as we go along in this session. So, in terms of sales leadership and what is the role of sales leadership in developing the teams and successful teams, is first is to understand what is the mission, the vision, and the purpose behind it. So if you're working for an organization and you're in a sales leadership role, you need to first understand what is the vision of your organization, what is the purpose of your organization, and as Simon Sinek says, what is the why behind it? Why you're doing what you're doing, right? So first you need to understand that thing. You need to be very clear on that, being a sales leader. And then once you sort of qualify that thing, you need to move on to that team building phase. So how do you build that team is, and I think the best way to start is to be empathetic, right? To understand what are the needs of your team members. It could be one person and it could be hundreds and thousands of people. It doesn't matter. But if you're a leader and you have that understanding of sort of that human understanding, being empathetic, and coming from that understanding, what are the tools, what are the needs of each individual on your team, and how you can sort of cater it and sort of align it to that specific team member. So what I'm trying to say here is, in sort of at a macro level, every team member is different, and the needs for every team member is different. So one of the best practice is that you need to understand, um, on a broader way, you can define a strategy for a broader team, but then to make that team successful, you have to understand the strengths and the weaknesses of each individual on your team, at a one-on-one level, right? So you have to sort of go deep into it, and you can't apply the whole strategy that you have developed, like on a broader level, uh, to that individual contributor. So because every person is different, and every person's strengths and weaknesses are different. So how I look at it is, if you have, let's say, pick a number, if you have about 10 people on your team, and some of them are good in one thing, and some of them are good in other thing. So what you can do is you can sort of create that collaborative environment in the team, where the weaknesses of some members become strengths for others, and the strengths of other people becomes the strengths of the other people. So it's sort of that collaborative environment, and it all comes down to the leader. You have to create that environment, that camaraderie, that collaborative openness, and just listen to the team members. So I think I said a lot in this statement here, because, as you said, it's a broader topic, so we need to kind of unpack it. But this is how and where I will start. But I would like to hear from you as well. What are your thoughts? Because it's always good to sort of bounce off the ideas, and that's how we learn from each other.
Certainly, and I will add a few other things that can complement what you described, Wajid. I think a couple of important things in terms of that culture, right? Having that alignment and that clear strategy from the beginning. I always like to look at things like understanding current state, right? Even as an organization, as a team, or even as an individual contributor, like where is it that we are today, and where is it that we want to go? So based on that current state and that desire or that future state, then we start building those, I'll say, tactics or those steps, right? You go from the strategy, going to the tactics and the execution. And going back to your point from the macro level with the team, I think it's a similar approach. You need to get that buy-in from your team in terms of what is it that, as an organization, as a sales team, you are trying to accomplish. And it's not only a number, right? Because oftentimes we see the numbers game in different organizations, and we know obviously revenue is important. I mean, that's what keeps obviously businesses alive. But beyond revenue, there needs to be a mission, a clear motivation in terms of going into accomplish obviously those goals. So I think it's kind of a twofold. There is certainly some forecasting aspects in terms of revenue, in terms of the business sustainability, but there needs to be an additional mission. And as you said, as you bring different different individuals, you might have different perspectives, and ultimately that enriches the team, right, as a whole. And I think that's a key element. Another thing that I believe is important is some of the let's say skills that we use working with customers. We should use it with our teams as a sales leader, like things like active listening to understand, as opposed to just to respond or to react. So understanding, and that goes back to what you described in terms of empathy, right? So understanding different team members from different perspectives. So I think that's essential. And all those things we do customer facing, we should do it also internally with our teams and our team members. So I think is we can put it in three buckets, like obviously having a clear, which you alluded to, like having a clear mission, a clear objective, that overall strategy, and then how do you unpack that into specific, tactics, even like a quarter business review, like what are those goals that you have as an organization, as a sales team. And then you can go into some of the tactics, right, in terms of forecasting, in terms of the numbers. But kind of the key message I want to share is not about necessarily about the numbers. In my view, if you have the proper behaviors, that will drive ultimately results, right? So it's kind of a different way to see it. If you go the other way around, if you go start with the numbers and
Right.
try to get things there, but if you go
Right.
with the proper behavior, you can reach the number, and that's basically a result of that process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You really summed it up so well because um, as a sales leader or as a leader in general, I think you really said it so beautifully that we need to understand the overall. We don't need to start from the numbers, but from the human side of it. It's sort of that human psychology, right? If you understand the human psychology, and sales is just nothing, but it's a psychology, right? It's a psychological thing, and most of the people make their decisions based on emotions than rationals, right? So all the sales or majority of this the buying that happens is based on the emotional decisions, right? So it goes back to your own team that if you're connected to them emotionally at a human level, you understand what every individual needs, and then you or derive your strategy based on the need of the organization and sort of align your team members and their needs, and they both kind of align at one point, then that's the best place to be in the organization, and that's what as a sales leader we need to do. So I'll just move on to the next topic here because I know we wanted to cover some of the things that was listed and that was on our mind here. And the thing is, like, now we have, let's say as a sales leader, you went to the first step where you have identified the vision, the purpose. The next step is you kind of work through the strategy, right? So you have identified the key team stakeholders or the key team members. You work together with them. Now all of you are on the same page. The next step is to build the sales strategy, right? So since you have identified the purpose and the mission, the next thing is to make that sales strategy. What are some of the key items, or call it key recommendations, if you were to put on as some initial steps? I know uh, we can't just make it as a one-stop shop here, or as a just one blanket statement to cover everything, but on a high level, what are some of the key recommendations that you would recommend to start as a starting point for the sales strategy?
I will say is having a clear vision where is that the team wants to go with it. And one of the things we discuss also is, as you said, like different teams, different organizations will have different strategies, different goals. But I think, in my view, it's about clarity, right? If you have a clear objective in terms of the team. So, and I'll give an example. Let's say if an organization, they want to, let's say, basically increase market coverage, they want to increase market share in a particular territory. Well, that's they will work toward that strategy, trying to achieve that particular objective. So it goes back to clarity and things that you can measure as well, right? I mean, if it is, let's say, in terms of adoption of new customers, if it is penetrating a new region, a new market, as long as there is clarity about what you're trying to accomplish as a team, then you can get the whole team on board and working toward the same goal. I find that the more you have clarity in terms of your objectives, that strategy, the more you will get that buy-in from your team, because I mean, they will recognize that they're working together toward that, achieving that particular or aligning with that particular strategy. So in my view, the first thing is clarity and transparency, because we might see in different areas where the strategy is not clear, it might be subjective, and then that it could be misleading as well in terms of the team members and their understanding. So if you have a clear, very precise, very clear strategy and where is it that you want to go with some specific metrics, I think that's important. And ultimately those are things that you can measure as a team. You can even see the contribution, right? Like as you get closer to the goal, as you get closer to the objectives, I think you get that motivation from your team. So I'll put the strategy into understanding first what is it that you want to go, where you want to get as an organization, right? Their market share, specifics around that, and then ensuring you have the proper processes and the proper, let's say, methodologies in place so you can properly work toward that goal. But yeah, I mean, strategy, it's also, as you described, I mean, it can be different areas, but in my view, having a clear understanding of that strategy is essential to get people on board and also aligned.
Yeah, no, I think you really nailed it there, because to your point, it's um, the clarity, transparency is something to start with. How clear you are in terms of your goals. What is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to achieve in next 6 months to 12 months time frame as a short-term goal, and what is it that you want to achieve in next 3 to 5 years as your long-term goals? So if you have those things lined up, clearly identified, then you can sort of strategize and navigate your strategy on those goals, right? And what I've seen in the industry, working in the industry, is that uh, if for some reason you don't have a clear if you don't have a clear or a clarity about your purpose or about your short-term or long-term goals, then you just kind of you sort of get lost in your day-to-day activities, right? So you don't know what is happening, you don't know what you want to do in next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever that time is, and you just sort of become very reactive as opposed to acting proactively, right? So if you want to grow, and if you want your team to grow, then you need to be very clear in terms of identifying your goals. That's where, to your point, that's where you need to start with. And if, as a sales leader, if you have identified the goals for your team, then I guess making a sales strategy is sort of an organic next step. It becomes very easier for you to defining that strategy, right? But I'll go back to another thing that you identified earlier, is about, as a leader, as a sales leader, it's important to listen to your team members, because they're kind of, your team members are sort of your eyes and ears in the field, right? So they bring very very valuable insight to you. It could be some sort of technical insights. It could be related to your product. It could be related to your, sometimes your competition in the market. Some valuable insight that maybe some of the things that are happening in terms of for the future perspective. So if you are open to listening, as you said earlier, and you listen with sort of having that mindset that you embrace all those things, and then take it back to your strategy table, right? And then sort of look into what those insights are and where do you stand. Are you going in the right direction? And if you're not, then it's very important that you do a pivot, right? And if you don't pivot, then there's a likelihood that you may fail in a long-term sales process. You may be successful in the short term because, yes, you're doing good business and the revenue is coming up and you're hitting your numbers and maybe you're exceeding it, but that's a short-term thing. For a long term, it's really important that you listen to the insights that's brought to your table by your sales rep, by the people that work in the field. And I want to hear your thoughts about it, Simon, because you have worked in the leadership roles, and I'm sure you might have seen those situations where you hear feedback, insights from your team members working in the field. How do you handle those situations, and what are your recommendations in these situations?
Something very important you mentioned, Wajid, was about, and I think that's something we should focus, sales leaders, is a sustainable growth and sustainable, let's say, business, right? As you described, we see many cases in which, like, sacrificing the long term, let's say, sustainability of the business, we focus on the short term, either revenue, etc., and ultimately that's not sustainable. So I think that's quite important what you describe in terms of having that long term thinking, which I know is difficult because obviously we have short short-term goals and
Right.
basically short-term things to accomplish. But ultimately, a couple of things that I want to take from what you share is, number one is having a sustainable strategy, right? Something that is not sacrificing the kind of the long-term strategy of the company, of the organization, just to get, let's say, short-term results. So that's number one. And the second thing, which I took, which I think is essential, is listening to our sales team members, because ultimately they're a customer advocate, right? They're bringing those insights through discussions, through dialogue with the customer. They can share perspective in terms of use cases, how the customer is perceiving the value of the solution from the organization. So two important things that you highlighted, Wajid, is one, having that long-term vision, which I know is difficult in sales because, we're driven
Yes.
by objectives, by tangible things, which, I mean, obviously are important, but we
Right.
should do it with the balance of the long-term strategy, right? We're
Right.
not just ensuring that we're not sacrificing, the core values and the core sustainability of the organization just for the sake of a short-term result. So I think that's very important. And the second thing that you described, I think, is listening to your team members. And as you said, even you can find with one team, different regions, maybe what a
Yeah.
region is experiencing in terms of customer feedback might be different
Right.
from a separate region, right? So being very open to different perspectives from the field and from the customer, let's say from people being close to the customer. So I think those are essential elements, and
Yeah.
having that open mind to pivot if needed, right? I think one thing that we also need to understand is it's okay to, if you have a strategy, or if you have, you might have a strategy and maybe you define some steps or some
Yeah.
tactics, and if you
Yeah.
need to change them, I mean, as long
Right.
as you're keeping your main focus, you can still change them, right? So you can
Right.
adjust as you go. So I think that's having that safety, or being safe to fail and to
Right.
adjust. I
Right.
think we should have that comfort zone as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as the world is changing, right? And most of the people are going towards
Yeah.
the lean methodologies, right? So essentially what it is that, the sooner you the sooner you adapt to changes, and the sooner you you fall, right? Meaning that sooner you fail and get up and learn from those failures, the better you will be suited and the better you will be placed and situated for the future, right? If you keep on holding to the change, and you're not willing to change or adapt to changes, the world is changing so rapidly. The technologies are changing so rapidly. The AI that we hear about almost every day, that they're penetrating almost into everything. And if we don't get used to these tools, and if we don't sort of use those tools to our advantage, I guess we are not getting prepared for the success on a longer term. So all good points here. And what I've seen is, Simon, in being open to listening, right? In being open to listening and taking the feedback from your team members. On that note, how important it is when you're defining your sales strategy, right? And sales strategy is not just a function, although it's a sort of a mandate for the sales team, but it's not just a function for sales. And the way I look at it is, there are other stakeholders at the same time. So if you're working in a large organization, you may have R&D people, you may have engineering and technology people, or team members, and then you may have people from finance. They don't report into you directly because they're not part of the sales team, but they are essentially important in the overall success and growth of the organization. So I guess the question for you here is, how do you make sure that you collaborate with those functions and you keep them uh, as sort of a partners or trusted advisors while you're defining some of your strategies?
Yes, I think it goes back to get that buy-in from your team members. And as you said, I mean, it goes not only with your direct team, but with different stakeholders within the organization, right? That's one of the things in sales, being let's say, that connection between the external, let's say, outside of the organization, your customers, and your internal, let's say, organization, where you have different stakeholders, different functions. I think it's important to have their buy-in in terms of understanding as well, like understanding their position in terms of their drivers, their metrics, ultimately they want to achieve, the same goals that you want as an organization, keep the business sustainable as much as possible, but ultimately they need to comply with some specific metrics. I mean, if you're into with the finance team, if you're working with the R&D team, so you need to understand not only the drivers but also the limitations they might have as well, right? Because
Right.
normally, and that might be something that we might need to adjust sometimes, is as a customer advocate, we want to get things, like right away, and like ultimately very quickly for the customer, but we need to understand that there are many moving parts even within our organization. So as you said,
That's right.
I mean, if it's having a new feature, I mean, that's great from the product perspective, but we need to understand, be mindful as well, like what that implies, right, in terms of the technical aspect, in terms of the development aspect, the quality processes, etc. So I think that having that same open mind, not only with the customer, but internally with I call them your internal customers, which
Yeah, that's
ultimately your
right.
team members, right? I mean, it could
Yeah.
be R&D, product team, engineering, because ultimately they are allies. They are going to help you achieve the same goals as an organization. So yeah, well said, Wajid. I think it's getting that buy-in. I mean, that alignment with your team member and all different roles is paramount, is essential.
Yeah, the reason I said that point, because we are here we are trying to make, uh call it, we are sharing our experiences on this platform here, right? So we are trying to make it simple for whoever is listening to us, and I just want to make sure that we cover all the important uh, pieces, even at a high level, but at least we cover the important pieces. So while you're defining a sales strategy, you know, although it sounds like it's only sales, but it's not only sales. You have other functions that you need to get buy-in from. You have to have your leadership in the same room sometimes, if not in the same room, at least they should be part of this process. They should be up to date what's going on. You need to sort of make sure that they're on the same page with you, because overall strategy, the sales strategy is not, I guess sales strategy is not just your strategy, but it is sort of a strategy for the overall organization. It defines the future for the overall organization. So having all these stakeholders on the same page is a big win for your future growth, right?
That's exactly it. I mean, because as you said, like ultimately, all those different team members and all the different areas within the organization, obviously, they want the business to succeed. They want to see, obviously, the revenue growing. That's kind of the lifeblood of the organization, obviously, the revenue and that sustainable growth. So I think that they're all going to be focusing on supporting the sales team, but also at the same time understanding, right, that there are
Right.
some elements in terms of navigating internally as well, because you need to, I mean, you are a facilitator for the customer, but then that means you need to go navigate internally as well, and things like, as you said, like maybe a
Yeah.
product feature,
Right.
something in terms of even legal, financial. So there are many things that you need to help navigate within the organization as well. And I think
Yeah,
that
that's right.
that's a good perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, Simon, as sales leaders, that we working with, let's say, with new sales reps, or with people who might be perhaps very new in the sales role in one way or the other. uh, and what happens is that if you don't give them this uh, holistic picture of what the sales role is, then sometimes it gets to the point where some people may start feeling frustrated, right? Because they don't know how to navigate it through within the organization. To your point, they may be really good with the customers, but when it comes to navigating within the organizations, bringing all the key stakeholders at the right time, when they're needed, internal stakeholders at the right time. If you don't develop those skills, then it becomes really hard for you to be successful in a complex sales situation. You may be good uh, at sort of uh, B2C, business to customer, like sales. But if it comes to business sales, like complex sales, and you don't have that skill developed where you can navigate internally within your organization, facing all the challenges, what the operations are facing, what the what challenges the technology is facing, what challenges, let's say, your leadership is facing. All those things, if you are not able to navigate internally within these different functions, then it becomes really challenging for you to be successful um, on a long term. So it's really important that we bring it to the table here, make it clear for our audience, our listeners, that you know you need to work on developing all these skills if you want to be successful in this career. It's a rewarding career, but there's a lot of effort behind it. It needs, as we were talking about in our previous episode, you need to have a grit and resilience to be successful in a long term. What are your just give some final thoughts on this one, and then I guess we can wrap it up.
Yeah, I think it was a good say to a good way to kind of share the or that summary with you what we went through today. And yeah, and to your point, I mean, there are many complex elements into the sales aspect and the approach, and understanding how to navigate different both external and internal stakeholders is essential. So yeah, I mean, it's rewarding, and to your point, I mean, a lot of persistence, discipline, and having that grit. So I think that's kind of the right path.
Awesome, man. Thank you again, Simon. It's always fun talking to you, and it's always enlightening when we share these insights with the community here. Um, to the audience, if you're watching this as a live session, we'll appreciate if you leave your comments and feedback. If you were watching this as a recorded session, you can still leave your comments, and we can see it, both myself and Simon, and we'll make sure that we get back to you. Again, thank you for watching and listening to us, and we'll get back hopefully sometime next week with a new topic. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.